Hello everyone, welcome to my video. My name is Jacob and I'm from Turbonomic technical marketing team. I wanted to show you something really cool today. So as you know, we always talk about multi-cloud, and one of the solutions you probably know is Rancher. So Rancher is essentially a multi-cluster, multi-cloud solution. Think of it as Anthos that Google recently announced, but this is more of an open source. You can deploy it on, very quickly. Like it's a container based. You can run it on Docker or deploy it anywhere else. They even have their own Rancher OS. Really cool. Check it out. Have a lot of good elements that can help you to manage your Kubernetes at scale and offer your environments Kubernetes as a service essentially. So it's pretty cool. But what I wanted to show you today, so I have a Rancher and deployed a Rancher on my environment, and I added two clusters. So I have an EKS cluster, which was deployed using Rancher, and I also imported a GKE cluster, which I had running before. And what I wanted to show you today is how you can use Turbonomic to deploy Kube Turbo on top of your environment and optimize it. And so when I mean optimize, is to ensure that your containers and workloads and applications and services are running on the most optimal, either scale the containers or move them between nodes if the nodes are causing performance degradations. And of course, there is also the concept of scaling your cluster when it needs to, either up when you lack of capacity or down where you have idle nodes. A lot of cool stuff, so make sure to check our website for more information. And look how convenient, we also released a new O'Reilly book, Managing Kubernetes Performance at Scale. So what I wanted to show you, I want to do it in less than 15 minutes. So I want to show you how to do that. So the first step you need to go to is actually GitHub, Turbonomic Kube Turbo. So this is where you're going to find everything I'm going to be talking today. There's two ways to deploy Kube Turbo on top of your Kubernetes, either Helm charts or via YAMLs. And I'm going to use the YAML and the role-based access on the Kubernetes. Several of the prerequisites and requirements. Obviously, you need an OpenShift or Kubernetes cluster, OpenShift 3.4 or higher, or Kubernetes 8.1.8 or higher. You need a Turbonomic server with the proper license. You need to know its URL. You need to know the Turbonomic username and password of admin user. You need to know the Turbonomic version, and I'll show you how to do that. And you have to make sure that once we deploy our pod, you provide us with the proper permissions, and everything will be covered in today's video. So without further ado, there's a lot of good stuff you can read in the GitHub, but let me show you what's gonna happen. So this is my GKE. So essentially, there's 5 steps, more or less. Depends if you want to create the namespace using our one of the YAMLs or use the kubectl. So the first thing is to either create a namespace for the Turbonomic, or you can use an existing one. It's totally up to you. But if you use an existing one, you have to make sure that you're going to update all the following YAMLs with the proper namespace. So for example, we start with the namespace. Then we create a service account, and again, note the namespace. So if you change it, make sure to change it, or if you use a different user, you have to be consistent with the following YAMLs. And after we create the service account, we're going to create a service account role binding for the cluster admin role. So we just have to make sure that is available. Please pay attention if you're using versions. All my versions are Kubernetes 1.9, above 1.9. So I'm using the default API version, but if you're using 1.8, make sure to use this one, or if you're using OpenShift 3.4 through 3.7, use just v1 in that API version field. After we create that binding, we're gonna create the config map. The config map is extremely important. It tells the pod how to connect to the Turbonomic server and send the data. So there's a few things you need to know. First of all, the Turbonomic version, and let me show you how you discover that. You go into the Turbonomic server, you go to settings, you go to updates, and you click about. Here's the version, 6.3.4. Next, of course, you need to know the Turbonomic URL. So here's the URL, but I use the IP, so both will work. And next, you need to know an admin user and password on the Turbonomic server. So I created a very simple username and password, kubadmin, and show you where you do that. So you go to user, and you can see here's my kubadmin, and it's administrator level on Turbonomic. And the last thing you need to know, you don't need to know, you just need to define the name, the target name. This is how the target will show up in the Turbonomic environment. And let me show you what I mean. So in Turbonomic environment, there are the target screen, and you can see right now I have two targets. One is Azure and one is AWS. These are the target name. And notice there are two. Once I'll add my GKE and my EKS, you will notice they're going to show up here. So let's do this. It's very straightforward and very easy. So I'm going to do that first with my kubectl, and just to show you, I'm going to do get nodes, and the response should be, so I'm connected right now to my GKE. So I have two nodes in my GKE, and if I'll go into my rancher and let's check it out. So here's my GKE, and click on nodes, and here are the two nodes. Awesome. So let's make sure that we can start with the namespace. So kubectl, get namespaces, and I have 4, none of them is Turbonomic. So I'm going to create one very quickly. So kubectl, I'm going to call it turbo to be consistent. Create namespace, and just call it turbo. And was created successfully. And let's see, everything is done. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm just going to follow the files I have. I'm going to start with number 2, creating the service account. And these are simply running a very simple command, kubectl create, using a file, and I'm going to point you to number 2, step number 2, which will create a service account. And you can see the message confirms it's created. So next will be to create the role binding. And very easy. As you can see, no errors or issues, so we can proceed to the next one. And this is the config map, again, telling the kubturbo pod where to connect to the Turbonomic server. It includes the embedded JSON. And lastly, the most critical and exciting process, and I think I hear drum rolls, and that's going to be to create the Turbonomic pod on GKE, and it will connect to the Turbonomic server. That's it. That's what you need to do. So let me kind of see if I can get the status of the pod. So we're going to do kubectl get pods, and specifically for the Turbo namespace, and the pod is running. So let's run in the Turbonomic server and see what's going on there. So if I refresh this page, I should see a new target showing up somewhere. There we go. So here's my kubturbo GKE. That's the target I gave it. So let's see where it is. So it's going to be under the on-premises, and the reason is it's not under the cloud because currently we are working on our GKE support and GCP support, so we can have the same view as you can see here for both Azure and AWS. But right now we treat it as if it's on-prem or bare metal based, which from our perspective, we still collect the important metrics, telemetry that we need from your services, your applications, your containers and pods and the nodes, and we know their utilization, we know the capacity, and that will allow us to generate all the actions that we need in order to optimize your Kubernetes environment. So you can see some examples here. The VDC or Virtual Data Center represents in our context all the namespaces. So here you can see all the namespaces. I can see all my the pods, for example, that I have. So here it says I have 18 pods running 30 containers. So you can see the list of the pods, and these are all the pods that Turbonomic just started to collect and will over time, as we collect more data, we will start generating actions to optimize it. So that was GKE, as you can see, really, really fast, really easy to deploy Turbonomic. So now I want to show you how it's going to look like should I do this on AWS. So here I have my AWS. You can see I can see my virtual machines, my instances on AWS, any applications running on top, and these are my ELBs, and this is my RDS, and we're generating actions to optimize this environment in order to, of course, assure performance and save money and all the good stuff that Turbonomic is doing for our cloud customers. So now let me show you how I can do this with Rancher. So what I did, I created a single YAML. So let me go into my EKS. And here I'm going to go into the namespaces. I'm going to go into the default. And I'm just going to create, I'm going to import a YAML. But before that, I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to call it Turbo, okay, because it's very easy to do that. And I'm going to do import. And here's my, let me go into my EKS and use all my all-in-one. So this is my all-in-one. So let me open it. And it contains all the information that you've seen before. And all I need to do is just import it. And here we go. You can see using Rancher, I deployed the kube Turbo and it's running. It's looks good. Everything is green. No issue whatsoever. So what I should see here, if I go into the Turbonomic targets again, here's my EKS showing up here. So what that means that now Turbonomic has visibility directly into the container as a service, the EKS running in my AWS environment. So I'm going to click on it. And there you have it. You can see that now Turbonomic has updated its supply chain, or the full stack, as some of you may know, and now includes the relationship between the containers, the pods, and the virtual machines that are running on. So for example, if I'll just click on one of these pods and just click on any of them, we'll see the full supply chain of how it's constructed. So you can see it's running on a node that is currently at risk because it doesn't have the capacity it needs. So this is an example of how Turbonomic can look for your full stack visibility. And here you can say you need to move from M4 to M5A, which is one of the new offerings that was recently released, where you could, for example, it's part of a scale group. So here we want to scale it, and you can save money should you move to that offering. But here you can see the full supply chain of the container pod in this example. And that's it. As hopefully I was able to show you how easy it is to manage and optimize your multi-cloud deployment with Turbonomic. And of course, Rancher can help you to do that at scale as well. So thank you very much for watching, and looking forward to see you again in my next video.